Hey everyone, this is Andy with Patterson Adjuster Training. I've got a good video for you today. Today, I am interviewing somebody who crossed over to the dark side. His name is Jeremy Davis. He's the owner of Omega Roofing and Construction. And Jeremy, I want to thank you for coming on my podcast today. When I first met you, you were a claims adjuster. So tell me a little bit about your company and tell me about that transition.
Yeah, I used to be an insurance adjuster for 11 years. I started off as going out inspecting all kinds of losses, whether it be hail damage on roofs or whether it be theft, fire claims, handled all of that. Then I transitioned in the insurance company over to our vendor programs where I would look over invoices from people who are drying out houses and had to get certified in water restoration and applied structural drying to know how to look at invoices to make sure that the insurance companies are paying adequately and not overpaying for things, because some companies like to squeeze insurance companies for all they're worth. So I did that for the last part of my career as an insurance adjuster. And then I moved over onto the construction side about 7 years ago. And it was one of the easiest transitions from one. It almost seems like it'd be a completely different field going from insurance to construction, but it was actually one of the easiest transitions because I'm familiar with the insurance process. I'm familiar with estimating from that time working in insurance and the estimating programs and knowing all the lingo. So whenever someone gets a roof, most of the time insurance is going to be either discussed, brought up, or utilized in putting a roof on. And so having that knowledge has really helped me out in that transition and made it really easy.
So one of the things that I hear adjusters saying, I never buy a roof in fringe hail areas. My thought is the damage is either there or it's not. In your experience, jumping over to the contractor side, you probably have ran across a few adjusters who just don't pay for anything, even if hail damage is there. Why do you think adjusters dig their heels in like that?
I think part of it is either lack of experience or they're trained in a severe area. For example, a lot of people might get their feet wet in insurance claims by going to a storm area with a catastrophe, where catastrophes happen, where it is softball size hail has damaged a roof. Well, that's really easy for anyone to see. I mean, I've got a 3-year-old who could get up on a roof and say, yeah, that doesn't look right. And so anyone could find that hail damage. But what happens is, like you said, there are fringe areas. So whenever you're looking at a roof, there can be areas. I mean, the hail gets smaller as it gets to the outskirts. And as it goes along the storm, it's either going to be growing or it's going to be, you're going to be having big hail, small hail. You can have one neighborhood that can have just like a small path that has a lot of the big hill, and then over in another part of that same neighborhood there's little to no hill as it gets further away from the storm. So that is the trickier part. Whenever you get into those smaller sizes of hail, it's still going to damage a roof, but it is not as obvious. And so whenever you're dealing with someone who is coming from the center of the storm, an adjuster who might be new, and there's a lot of new adjusters, a lot of new roofing companies, but if they're just looking at that big damaging hail that anyone can see, and then they get closer to the outskirts where it's still a damaged shingle, it's a little bit harder to verify, and it might take some rain to knock off some granules, or it might take a little bit of time for it to show up, but it's still damaged. One of the problems is an insurance company isn't going to typically raise a shingle up to look at the bottom of it to see if it has broken the mat. And I've had adjusters who say, yeah, there's no hail damage to this roof. And I'll point out some hail and they'll say, yeah, that's not hail damage. It's not big enough to break the mat. And so as a contractor, I can fix a shingle that I lift up. I carry all the tools to do repairs. So I lifted up the shingle, showed them the bottom of the shingle, and showed that the mat was actually fractured, even though it wasn't the big obvious 3-inch hail. And then we got the roof paid for. Having that knowledge from my past, I've been looking at 300 roofs a year, or around there, get a lot of experience really fast. So just having that background, helping customers go from something that's totally not going to be paid for to getting it paid for helps out a lot of people during that process.
Yeah, you're in a unique spot because you know both sides. You may have some good contractors out there, but they don't really necessarily understand the insurance side. And you may have some good adjusters out there that really don't understand the contractor side of it. So you've got the best of both worlds. I do a lot of catastrophe work. And one of the questions that I get all the time from policyholders, and we're really not supposed to answer it, is, hey, Andy, who should I use? Who's good? What advice would you give to homeowners who are looking for a contractor?
That's a great question. And I actually use this as an illustration for even people who are saying that they're wanting to get 3 bids, because that's really, really popular. Everyone's like, oh, you got to get 3 bids, got to get 3 bids.
Right.
And so I always say, I kind of use this illustration. It's like you have got all the contractors in Oklahoma who say that they're roofers. So you've got a million people who are saying, yeah, we're roofers, especially after a storm. Everyone's a roofer. Well, the first thing that you got to do is in Oklahoma, to advertise that you can do roofs and actually to install roofs, you have to be registered with the state to be a roofing contractor. So that's the first thing that I always tell people. And on my business card, I've got a construction industry board number. And so it'll show my registration with the state. And you can actually go to the state, or I'll usually type in Google, and you can type in Google Oklahoma roofing contractors, are they licensed? And you'll see a link that says that it'll say basically, are they licensed? You can click on that, put in the name of the owner, or you can put in the business name or that construction industry board number to see if they are in good standing with the state. So that's the first thing that I would tell a company to do is like, yeah, go ahead and get 3 bids, but that's the first thing. Don't get a bid from someone who isn't registered with the state. So that's going to narrow your pool of people down a little bit. The next thing I would say is, to become registered with the state, we have to follow the Oklahoma Roofing Registration Act. In that 30-page or so document, it says that our labor only crews, which most contractors who are roofers hire installers that are labor only crews. Then some people call them subcontractors. So my crew, I made sure that they were registered with the state as well, because that's one of the stipulations in the Registration Act, is that our labor only crew, who's not out there soliciting work, they're just the workers, that they are required to be registered with the state as well, have to have the same insurance and qualifications, have to be in good standing with the state, have to have all that in place. So that, again, is going to narrow your pool of people down. And I bet if you asked most roofing contractors if their crew was registered with the state, you're going to have a handful of people who say yes, because most of them don't even know that that's a requirement. So once we get through those things, it's like, all right, well, there's still a lot of people to choose from, possibly. The next thing I would say is, if you're going to be hiring someone to install a roof on your house, which is pretty much the biggest investment that most people have, is you want to make sure that people know how to do it properly. So I am a CertainTeed master shingle applicator. What that means is CertainTeed, who is a manufacturer of shingles, they have requirements for how to actually properly install the shingles, and they have a booklet. It's an applicator's manual. Actually, I went through the manual. You take a test, you send it off to CertainTeed, and then they will give you that certification of master shingle applicator. And that just shows that I know how to properly put a shingle on. I know how to measure a roof properly, so you're not going to be, at the end of the day, running out of materials. A lot of the roofs that I've seen here lately, they're failing because of improper installation. Think, well, it's easy. You just have a shingle that's 3 feet long and you put in 4 nails and move on. Well, if the nail is put in too high, then it's going to catch too much wind. It's going to blow off. And I had to replace a whole roof just the other day because the person who installed the shingle was probably during the sale of a house. They hired the cheapest person because they don't care. They're just going to be moving out anyway. And the cheapest person put the nails about 5 inches too high. And they didn't realize that that was improper installation. So the shingles are blowing off. So we had to replace that whole roof because it was improperly installed. So being a master shingle applicator is really important because I can know that my crew is doing it properly because I go and check on their work and they know what they're doing as well. The last thing is, now that we've narrowed down those three different areas, we're down to even a smaller group of people. And that's whenever I'm saying, all right, if you're going through an insurance process, what better person to have than someone who has a background in insurance? And having that 11 years of insurance background is going to be valuable whenever you're looking at all the terms, whether it be building ordinance and law, whether it be deductibles, depreciation, actual cash value, replacement cost value. These are a lot of terms that are going to be thrown to the customer and they might have no idea what any of it means. And so I don't act as a public adjuster, but I can use that knowledge to help put it in layman's terms what that actually means whenever they get their information from their insurance company. Having that background really helps people have that peace of knowing, all right, I'm going to be going through this with someone who has done this for a long time. Once you funnel through all those steps, then you're just left with just a few people. Whenever I'm telling people, hey, go get your 3 bids, but these are the things that I would look for if I were in your shoes. And you might have your own criteria, but this is, being from this industry, this is what I'd look for to best help my customers through a claims process.
You're absolutely right about that high nailing. I see that all the time on roof inspections where they overdrove the fasteners through the shingle mat, or the nails are in there cockeyed, so you've got a lot of nail pops, where they just use a 3-tab shingle on the starter where they spin it around. Well, then that seal strip is 5 inches up further than it's supposed to be on that first course of shingles. When you made the transition, I was talking to you. You probably don't remember it. I said, Jeremy, have you ever been on a roof and didn't find any hail damage and told the homeowner, don't turn in the claim? You said, yeah, I've been on a lot of those. That is surprising to me because I see a lot of roofs that I'm on with roofers that they're pointing out stuff that honestly, I don't even know what they're looking at. It's just shingle imperfection. Sometimes it's bird poop. It's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, I had an insurance agent who called me up and they said that they were referred to me by someone who I've dealt with in the past. And they said, I'm an insurance agent, and the last 10 claims that were turned in, 9 of them were denied for no damage. And what happens in those situations is roofing companies, like you said, are turning in everything that they can get on in front of a customer. And then the agent looks bad by the customer saying, why am I purchasing insurance if I don't even, if you're not going to be paying for anything? It puts that turmoil between the customer and the agent. And so they said, we heard you had an insurance background and know what to look for through insurance claims. And since I've been working for that agent and they've been sending me out there to look at claims, they haven't had any denied. Not to say that that's not going to always be the case, but as of now, there haven't been any that have been denied. So now we're at 100%. That makes the agent look like a rock star.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're sending someone out here who's educating me of what the condition of my roof is. They're pointing out blisters and saying, okay, yeah, that's a blister, that's an imperfection of the shingle, but it's not hail damage. And I explain to them what that is. They might see some foot traffic, and I can say, all right, here's some foot traffic. Here's a nail pop. This isn't storm damage, and this isn't what we're looking for. So I educate the person what I'm seeing on their roof, and I show them pictures of the roof, so that way they feel like, all right, this isn't something he's just making up. They're actually seeing their roof, and they're seeing me take pictures. So that's really important, is having someone who has that background and not just turning in every claim, because as you know, if you file too many claims, then you can actually get dropped by your insurance carrier. And now they're even in more of a world of hurt because now they've filed claims and they're trying to find someone to insure them. And that person who's insuring them, they're going to be like, oh, we know you're moving over to us because you're going to file a claim with us. So it's going to be a lot harder to get insurance at that time too.
So I was in Kansas City working a storm, and I called this guy to schedule a roof inspection on his house. And he told me he hadn't had anybody come by and look at his roof at that point. I think the roof inspection that I scheduled with him was like the next week. I get out there and he said, man, Andy, I think I screwed up. And I said, well, why is that? He said, well, this roofing salesman came by and knocked on my door and asked if he could get on my roof to check my roof out. And I told him he could, and he asked me to sign this permission slip. So he said, I just signed it and moved on. He said, but afterwards, I found out that I signed a contract that says I'm going to use them for the repairs. If I don't, I pay them 20% of what the estimate ends up being. That gives contractors a bad name. Now, I know that there's adjusters out there that they're just doing things they shouldn't be doing, but that gives all contractors a bad name. That guy in Kansas City gives you a bad name, and you're doing things the right way.
It's funny because part of me wants everyone to do it the way that I do it the right way, treat the customer like they would want to be treated. The other part of me is, you know what? All these people who install the roofs improperly, the customers call me and then I do it correctly. Now I get a job. You've got these contractors who are out there pressuring people to sign paperwork, and then they see that's one of the three contractors, and I'm one of the three that go over there, and I'm educating them, and I'm not pressuring them. They have that sense of relief, and again, it pushes people towards me. So part of me is like, I want people to do the right thing, but the other part is all these other contractors who aren't doing things the right way, who are trying to pull one over on the insurance company, and the customers get a bad taste in their mouth saying something's not right about this guy. It's all making it easier whenever they're trying to decide between the three, like me and two other people. So it's like yeah, it's bad, but it also makes it easy for me.
So we've bashed enough on contractors. Tell me some of the aggravations you find with adjusters. What is your biggest, to use a corporate America term, what is your pain points with some adjusters you run across?
My biggest pain point with insurance adjusters is inconsistency. And you could have the same insurance company go out on the exact same house, and one adjuster would say, yeah, this is damaged. And one adjuster would say, no, it's fine. I had one insurance company, big name insurance company, who was insured a bunch of houses here in Owasso where I live, and I was getting a lot of roofs replaced from a storm that came through, and they changed adjusters in the area. They said, oh, this guy, we're moving him out to Tulsa, and we're moving this other guy in. The other guy comes in, and I turn in a claim, same type of damage that that's been paid for the last 2 years. And the adjuster comes in, he's like, yeah, I've never paid for any claim in Owasso. He's like, there hasn't been any hell in Owasso. And I was like, that's interesting because your coworker has been paying for claims for the last 2 years, and you're saying that there's no damage, and this is the same type of damage. And so it was just inconsistent, and he was saying that before he even looked at the roof. And so that's one of my issues with insurance adjusters is just they're not consistent. You would think that being an adjuster, you're like, okay, I've worked in this area, and I know that there's been storm damage. Well, I turned in a claim, and as normal, the adjuster approved the roof, and then the neighbors see that we're doing the roof, and so they start talking, and then I go look at the neighbor's roof because they call me up and say, hey, I see you're doing my neighbor's roof. Come over here and take a look at mine. I go over. Yeah, you've got the exact same damage. I called the same company. They sent out the same adjuster. And so he had looked at the neighbor's house a week before. And before he got up on the roof, he goes, well, is this real hail damage or is this that BS hail damage? And I was like, you were just at the neighbor's house last week. And it's like he didn't even pay attention that he had met with me the prior week, and he's saying that I'm making up some BS hail damage, and he had just approved the roof next door. That's inconsistency with one adjuster.
That was the same guy?
Same guy. And so how much worse can it be whenever you get inconsistency with the same person? So that's what I deal with. A lot of roofing companies around have certain adjusters that are like, oh, this is not going to go well. And by not going well is like meaning that everyone else would pay for a roof, but this one guy thinks that nothing is hail damage. That's my biggest pain point, is just they're inconsistent. What I do is I actually carry around a brochure that one of the major carriers has put out for, is my roof damaged by hail? And I'll carry that, and I will show that brochure to my customers. And it has a picture of what hail damage looks like, and it has pictures of what blistering looks like, cracking, manufacturing defects, wear and tear. I carry that around and I'll show that to a customer. So whenever I'm showing their pictures of their roof, I can do a side by side comparison. Say, all right, you see how this has a pattern to it? That is aware, that could be a manufacturing defect. Or do you see how this one has lines through it? Well, that is just a heat fracture. Or you see this one has a circle around it and basically looks like something has hit it. Then I can say that could be a characteristic of a hail hit. And then I can compare that with what that brochure is. And it has helped me a lot explain to people what I'm seeing. But then again, on the flip side, I show that to an adjuster saying, hey, this is what your company has sent out as what to look for hail damage. And if you look at my picture that I took of this roof side by side, they're almost identical. And he's like, yeah, but that's not really what I'm looking for. And so going back to being inconsistent, he's inconsistent with what paperwork is being sent out to the public.
So do you see a difference between staff adjusters and independent adjusters?
Yes, I do. Staff adjusters, of course, are people who are hired by the company and work usually on an hourly rate.
Mm-hmm.
So they, some companies, they're better because they know it doesn't matter if I pay for it or I don't pay for it, I'm still getting paid the same amount. Some companies you'll get like a true adjuster who can make a decision based on their licensing. Whereas other companies, it seems like the staff adjusters are just, I'm just going to save as much money and just never pay for anything. And so got two major carriers in mind. I'm not going to mention them, but being around this for a long time, I know that there's some carriers who actually can use their brains. And it seems like the other carriers, adjusters, are just told either they got in trouble for paying for something that their supervisor said don't pay for it. Something has happened to where everyone just is scared to pay for something, because there are going to be times whenever an adjuster and a roofing company are seeing moderate hail damage that is going to be kind of like right there on the fence. And the adjusters who can look at all the surrounding information. The gutters are damaged, the window screens are damaged, the rain caps are damaged, all this damage. So what we're seeing on the roof, that's probably hail damage. Whereas some other adjusters might say, yeah, we see all that other stuff, but yeah, it's not big enough to damage this roof. And so they'll just say no damage. So staff adjusters can be better, but they're the ones that usually make the ultimate decision. Independent adjusters, they have, it's kind of interesting. I've kind of found out that they get paid on differently. Sometimes they get paid on how big of a loss the claim is. So you might have some adjusters who might just write up everything because they're like, if I can get this claim over $10,000, then I'll get paid more. So sometimes the independent adjusters are easier to work with because they're going to be having the customer in mind, but they also have that ulterior motive of, if I can get this over a certain amount, then I'm going to get paid more. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. And I'm not going to be the one to tell them like, this is what you need to do morally. It's like, I'm going to let them do their job, and then I will help the customer through the process. Because I mean, I can only handle my morals. I can't start being the morality police for all of the roofing industry and insurance industry. That'd be another job in itself.
Right. You already got one full-time job. You're absolutely right. The property tells a story. That's what I tell new adjusters all the time. Well, Jeremy, I know you're busy. I appreciate you joining me on the call today. I think the more the adjuster and the contractor can work together, the better off we're going to be. We're all ultimately really working for the same person, and that's the customer. Thing I appreciate about you is, sounds like you do things the right way. If people need a roof, or if they think they may have some hail damage that they need to get looked at, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, the easiest way to get in contact with me is just to call or text me. My number is 918-986-2459. I will be asking just some questions. What's the age of your roof? Who's your insurance carrier? And what issues you're having with your roof? Do you have any leaks? And I'll come out there and I'll look at the roof. It's a free assessment. It's going to have some value. I mean, I'm using my gas money to go over there. So, I mean, hopefully if I do a good job, then I'll get the opportunity to get the business. But the first meeting is usually going to be a free assessment of the roof. And so I'll walk around and make sure that, and I'll again present pictures of what I find and the damage. And we don't just do roofing, we do interior paint, we do remodels and stuff like that. So it's not just limited to roofing, but we do all kinds of construction. But I can help people through that process. So yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of me is just going to be through call and text me, give me your name and address, and then a good time to meet up with you.
Okay, sounds good. And I will have your information in the description below. And so, Jeremy, we're going to have to do this again real soon. I enjoyed talking to you. We'll see you out and about somewhere.
All right, sounds like a plan. Appreciate it.